Michigan Wolverines preview video. Guys, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to really help us out. Chris, I'll go ahead and get us started here. Gone is Jim Harbaugh. He's off to the NFL, and in steps Sharon Moore. Right, he's going to take over the Wolverines. He kind of coached in a few games last year. We got a chance to kind of see what he could do last year in some games while Harbaugh was suspended. You know, here's the thing, Chris. All of their offense is pretty much gone from last year. Actually, and I'm sure the thing that we're gonna get to with this video is a lot of people from last year's team have left, obviously. So that brings up a lot of questions. I think the most interesting question that we have to look at this year is who's going to be the quarterback, right? Is it going to be Alex Orji, right? He's more of the athletic type of guy, or there's Davis Warren. He's the better thrower of the football. You know, I think my thoughts on it are we're going to see a lot of both of them this year. They're both going to play a lot of snaps, in my own opinion here. You know, whoever does win the job, they're going to likely look to lean on Donovan Edwards at the running back position. I think he's, you know, one of the best running backs in college. That room, you know, still has some depth there. Is it as good as they were last year? No, but I still think they'll be pretty good at running the football this year. Tight end Colston Loveland is most likely going to be their primary target. You know, I want to see somebody in that receiver room step up, right? I need somebody to be that guy. Even last year, I didn't think that they had like one guy that was like that dog, right? I want to see them separate, themselves in the wide receiver position this year. So we'll see. Another important question, the offensive line, one of the most rebuilt in all of college football. You know, how are they going to hold up this year? And again, you know, we're going to flip it over to you, and then we're going to get into their schedule here, Chris. How does all this impact? How does all of this stay together for them as this season goes forward? I think that's where the offense is going to start and end this year, is on the offensive line. Chris, I'll kick it over to you for the defense.
Yeah. One thing I can guarantee you with Michigan, they're probably going to have another good defense this year. They do bring back some starters, obviously, from last season's #1 rated defense. Just a few stats here on that vaunted Michigan Wolverine defense last year. They only gave up 10.4 points per game. That was #1 in the country. I don't think they get enough credit as far as like all-time great defenses. I think this one should be talked about a little bit. That's very, very impressive. Don't get much better than that. They also only gave up 240 yards or less per game, which was second in the country. That's really, really good as well. So yeah, great defensive year last season. What's that mean for this year though? They did lose their defensive coordinator. They picked up Don Martindale. And he was an NFL assistant for a lot of years. That guy's name probably rings some bells with some people there. But he's been very, very successful in the NFL as well. So I don't see much changing there, schematically with them defensively. The big thing too is up front, Michigan returns 2 of the Big Ten best defensive tackles in Mason Graham and Kent Grant. They'll be really good up there again. Edge rushers, Derek Moore and Hosea Stewart, whom shared snaps last season, will be looked to fill those roles this year on in the edge. And then at linebacker, they picked up Ernest Huntsman. He was a transfer from Nebraska, by the way. He played a little bit last season with us. And then Jayshon Burham from Maryland. He'll be looking to fill that role as well. So they did all right in the transfer portal. And then on the back end, they got All-American corner Will Johnson back. And then they got safety Makari Page. So they should be pretty good there. They do have a couple spots at corner they need to lock up. But I expect Michigan's defense, Christian, overall to probably be top 10 again this year. I really do. And we'll let's bring up that schedule here. I'll give a prediction on Michigan. And Vegas, I'll throw this out here. Vegas has them pegged at 9.5 wins, which is kind of an interesting number for me. I'll start this off and kind of go through the schedule, but I have them going 9-3. I know that may shock some people. Maybe that's not as high as, most Michigan fans think, but as you can see here that, they start off the year against Fresno State, and this will be a sneaky game. We remember Fresno State last year had a pretty damn good year. I'm not sitting here picking Fresno State to beat Michigan, but I think this game might be a little closer than people think. Then you got the big one, Texas. You got that at home. I think that's huge for Michigan, but unfortunately, I think you drop that game. I think it'll be a lower scoring game, but as we know, Texas's offense is pretty electric and should be really good this year. Arkansas State, you better win that one. And then you have USC. And I think Michigan wins this game. I got to stick to my script on the USC video. Minnesota, who I think will be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten this season. Then you go on the road at Washington for a rematch of last year's national title game. I still think Michigan returns a little bit more than Washington does, obviously, and I think they're better suited to win this game, even though it's on the road. You got at Illinois. I don't see an issue there. Michigan State's in a rebuild, essentially. That should be a win. Then you got the one with Oregon. Thankfully, you get them at home, but I just don't think that's going to be enough for Michigan, so I think you drop that game, Christian. You go on the road at Indiana. You got Northwestern, and then the big game against Ohio State. I know Michigan's won 3 in a row against them. We both predicted it last year. I'm going the other way this season. I'm taking Ohio State there. I got 9-3, Christian. I want to hear your thoughts on this schedule and what you think Michigan will be this year.
We were close, Chris. We were really close. I got them at 8-4. You know, I struggled with it. I could see 9-3. I could see how you get to 9-3, but for me, I got them at 8-4. Losses to Texas, USC, Oregon, and Ohio State. I think, you know, I think, you know, this is actually a pretty tough schedule. I mean, all things considered. And you know, even some give me games in here, Chris. I think, you know, we'll flip the question back to you. What's the best case? What's the worst case for Michigan this year?
I think worst case, if that offense doesn't get going and they can't really find a clear-cut starter at QB, I could see maybe, just with this schedule, maybe a 7-5 type of year. Do I think it could get worse than that? I really don't. I expect Michigan to be in every game strictly because of their defense. I do think it's going to be very good. Best case, man, if that, on the flip side, if the offense looks really well, they can establish the run like I think they're going to, and the offensive line can gel with all those new pieces, maybe 10-2, 11-1. I know that sounds like a stretch. I got 2 questions for you, Christian. I want to ask what you think as far as floor and ceiling, and then I want to ask you, do you think Michigan, how do I want to word this? Do you think Michigan can compete for a Big Ten title this season?
Here's the thing. I agree with you 100% on your sentiments. Michigan fans aren't going to want to hear this. A game, I didn't pick it, but a game that you could circle as a potential trap game is the Fresno State game. It's the first game of the year. I remember last year, you know, we said something very similar, Duke, you know, versus Clemson. Everybody, all the Clemson fans thought we were crazy. Well, we saw what happened. Duke knocked them off. Now, I think they're still trying to figure out who their quarterback's going to be. Michigan should run roughshod over that game against Fresno State. But, hey, crazy things can happen. Like you said, Fresno State, they get back a lot of production from last year's team. I think their coach is pretty good. You know, there's some things there. But the other side of it, too, is do I think, to answer that other side of that question, do I think they can compete for a Big Ten championship in the next couple of years? I have to see, you know, Alex Orji or Davis Warren, like one of those guys has to step up. I have to see somebody in that receiver room truly step up. As you know, Chris, they're kind of built in a way, I would say, like Clemson was years ago, where the question is going to be about their offense. They lost, you know, after the Trevor Lawrence years, it felt like they had DJU and he was an athletic quarterback, and a lot of Clemson fans weren't really thrilled for him, and their receivers, you know, I feel like have gotten worse over the years, and they've had to really lean more on their run game, and then and then teams have been able to stack the box because they don't fear them. So I think we could see something very similar with Michigan. Now, obviously, Clemson, if you put them in the Big Ten, would they be winning 9-10 games a year? And I don't think that would necessarily be true. So I'm not going to give Michigan any preferential treatment with this. I personally think, to answer this question, no, they're probably going to take some steps back. I do like the coaching staff. I want to say this, though. That coaching staff gives them an opportunity. Sharon Moore, it's not his first rodeo. I mean, he did coach some games last year. He's got very limited experience, but he does come into this year having coached some games and been the guy. You get Wink Martindale, you know, a guy that he was with the Giants last, if I remember right? And then he got let go. So you see a lot of those NFL coordinators come down to college. I think Wink Martindale is going to do a fine job with his defense. So I do think that they'll still be. Let me kind of back up here. I think because of the coaching staff, they'll still have an opportunity to compete for the Big Ten. I don't know if they're seriously, going to be able to win it, though, just because of some of those other teams that are kind of coming in.